I remember the three of us, 1,000%, not only convinced, but for whatever reason, ridiculously stoked. Oh my God, we're going to be here for the big return of the big show.
Yeah.
And so as this is coming, 10, 9, 8, the countdown starts rolling. We are in position with the hand. And it went, whoa! Like, I don't know why we were so, but I remember being like, it's got to be Big Show. He's going to show up and he's going to win the Royal Rumble. Like, this is it. We hadn't seen him in years. This is Big Show's back. We heard he lost a ton of weight. He looks great. And so that's what we thought it was. And instead, number 30, and the way they do it is great because they do the 10, 9, 8 countdown. It gets to 0, you're, and then nothing for like a second or two, just to let it breathe before the rattling of the chains starts, and then Cena's music hits. And at this moment, now, you certainly were not happy. Matt and Romina certainly were not happy. I completely lost control of every part of myself, and I like left my body and forgot that I didn't like John Cena and marked out so good. More than I think I ever have in my life. Like, it was insane. It is so great to be back here with each and every one of you. Welcome back to our sort of live journal of a lifelong wrestling fan that continues year after year after year, but also reflects fondly on the positive vibes that we've had in the past as a wrestling fan. And today is no different, as we'll be looking back at one of my favorite live events of all time, the Royal Rumble 2008. And I'm joined by another gentleman who was at the Royal Rumble 2008 live, my main man, Steve, down in Orlando, Florida. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. You know, it's always a great time coming off of a winter break. You know, last week was our first full week back to school and to work and all that stuff. And now we're heading into a 3-day weekend. So
awesome.
Pretty good.
Very true. As we are recording this here, we are a Martin Luther King weekend for you.
Yes.
Very, very cool. Yes. And so I'm sure this will go up a little later. I was going to talk with Steve about that shocking win by the Cleveland Browns, but I won't take any of your intelligence for granted here if you're watching along here with us. But yes, no, that's great. Always great to have a 3-day weekend, especially nice coming off of your first full week back to get a little breather at the end of everything as well.
Yeah. You know, we had a couple of interesting days this week, but, you know, everything worked out great.
Well, that's great. No, and this year, you know, Royal Rumble 2008, I guess before we get into the Rumble 2008, where were you, just to kind of set us up as to where you were in your life, as you remember, as either a wrestling fan or even personally in January of 2008?
January of 2008 was actually an interesting time because this is when I would have just kind of first started talking to the woman that would turn out to be my wife.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we had met
camera over to her being next to you.
No.
More the merrier.
No. Because we had met in a Halloween party in 2007, and we had maybe said 5 words to each other. We just kind of awkwardly sat next to each other at the party for a little bit, but like, you know, and then in January, a couple of months later, we had all kind of gone out, as it happened to be invited to the same kind of big group, you know, kind of going out, hanging out at the ESPN Zone, rest in peace.
Oh, it's no longer there?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's been there for a long, long time.
The disappointment in my voice, despite not thinking about it for the last.
Not even knowing what it was.
Yeah.
It was, you know,
it was a great place though.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. But yeah, so and you know, that's where we kind of met and actually interacted a lot more for the first time. I kicked her butt in air hockey.
This thing?
What'd you say?
Just the two of you went to the ESPN Zone?
No, it was like a big group, like kind of hangout thing, where it just kind of, because we had so many mutual friends that it just happened that we were both there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and after that, I remember going back and immediately friending her on Facebook. The rest is history.
The rest is just 16 years later, and you guys are coming up here on 9 years married soon.
Yeah, yeah, this year is going to mark our 9th year, and then
is that in April?
Yep.
There you go. There you go. I was the best man, so I should know, but I was. I know it was in 2015, but I always try to figure out that. But that's very cool. What a cool story there. You know exactly where you were January 2008.
Absolutely.
I was just actually probably transitioning out of my first long-term relationship that I was in throughout, I guess, college, and getting into my final year of undergraduate. So that was an interesting time for me. And I think really it was the first time in my life that I was really trying to figure out who I was. I feel like I had always kind of had the same friend group, the same people that I was always together with, and then transitioned into just immediately into that relationship. And so once that ended, I realized like, all right, well, I was still in college trying to be friends with those people. Now it's like, okay, hey, I'd like the college experience in my final semester. So it was a little difficult to do that. But, I think definitely that's when things like starting to go out, starting to, go to the bars, so to speak, embracing happy hours and different things, because I was at a different work setting with people who would typically embrace this sort of lifestyle. So I started to go along too. I realized like, wait a minute, I can go and bang back however many drinks as I need to do and drink anyone under the table and have a great old time that you would normally have at the age of 21. So that's pretty much what I was doing here in January of 2008 for the first time in my life, because I never did any of that in college or anything. I was straight edge means I'm better than you. So it was a little bit of a different time period for me, but a fun time. Where were you at? Because last time you were here, well, not last time you were here, but we had just talked not long ago, about a year or so ago, about our trip to SummerSlam 2007, which is just about 5 months prior to this particular event, the Royal Rumble 2008. What do you feel like, where were you now as a wrestling fan, in comparison to where you were in August of 2007?
Definitely, looking back now, this kind of, I guess the signs were all there, where I was definitely towards the end of definitely the peak of wrestling fandom. And this was definitely the downward kind of downward spiral, I guess you could say, into not being a wrestling fan for about 14, 15 years. This is definitely my last live event since the one that we took last summer in July. Yeah. So there's definitely that. And I think it was a very steep decline from this show to just flat out not watching anymore.
And I think for me, this was right, I'd say almost at the beginning of about a 3-year period of time where I became like absolutely obsessed. I mean, I was already obsessed, but I feel like this time, because I had my friends Matt and Romina, they're a married couple, and I was very good friends with them at the time, and they were absolutely obsessed as well. And so whenever there was anything wrestling going on, anything from a press conference to an independent show to a WWE live event, we would make sure that we went to every single thing that we possibly can get our hands on. They weren't working at the time. I was. And so it was a little hard at times to kind of balance school and work and the wrestling fandom. But anything within Maryland to Pennsylvania to Connecticut to anywhere you could think of, we would try to get to any sort of wrestling event. So here we were, Royal Rumble 2008, coming to our town. We knew about this for a little bit of time, but had not gotten tickets for this. And so we did this a lot. A lot of this was, hey, we're going to hold off on getting tickets because we can get them as it gets closer. That's always been kind of to this day, that's what I do. And sometimes it bites you in the butt where you just don't think you're going to get tickets. And other times they release them at the last minute. But I think that this one is one of the bigger close calls probably in the history of my time as a fan, because we didn't have tickets, but our fandom's at a sky high. And the idea that the Royal Rumble, the biggest event in the world, our favorite event, and probably my favorite event of the year for WWE, because I'd say even though Wrestlemania is the biggest event of the year, the granddaddy of them all, for me, I always like the Royal Rumble the most. I think it's the most fun to watch. The idea of being there live. Now, were you at the Royal Rumble 2000? Might not have been. Were you still at?
No, that sounds like a little bit before when I would have started to go into live shows. I'm pretty sure my cousins were.
that's Cactus Jack and Triple H.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I mean, I remember that as also when Taz debuted. That's one of my
yeah. It's in my opinion the best wrestling show of all time. And for those who don't remember, Steve and my retrospective on that show, I did not go to that show. My uncle told us he had tickets, and it turned out the tickets were for Raw like the next month. So we did not go to that Rumble. So for me, the idea that the Rumble was coming around again back to Madison Square Garden, I was like, I have to be there. And we were going to do everything it took to be there. But it was certainly a journey to get there. Have you always enjoyed the Royal Rumble, Steve?
I always have also, yeah. And I think one of the things that I always liked about it is you never knew who was going to be coming out. You never knew who was going to be returning or making a surprise guest appearance, or, you never knew who was going to win in the first place. So all of those things. And obviously, of course, it being kind of like the kickstart to WrestleMania season. It was always one of our probably one of my favorite events, like just generally speaking.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, it was such a fun time for me, I think, because WrestleMania, you usually know where the big matches are coming. And once they're there, I feel like the road to WrestleMania from about February till WrestleMania at times, even though the hype's very exciting, no, they're not going to do too much, right? They don't want anyone to get hurt. They don't want to give you too much. It's just going to be a lot of promos and everything. But Royal Rumble, beginning of that season, they're still moving some things around. They don't necessarily know where they're going to go with it. So in my opinion, it's the most exciting time of the year to be a fan. And this year, 2008 was no different. This is the famous. I don't know if you've seen this, Steve. I know you're no longer on the artist formerly known as Twitter, but on Twitter, when you were there, you probably have seen it. The picture of the WWE roster in the locker room, and somebody saying, "Boy, WWE's roster was loaded in 2008." And in that picture, you've got like Triple H, Batista, Randy Orton, John Cena, Umaga, Finlay. It's, I think, a WWE magazine cover that was to promote the Rumble. And if you folded it out, it was like 3 pages long.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so that is kind of where we're at here in 2008. And one of the really exciting things they were doing is WWE was bringing WWE Fan Axxess. Rather than just doing this at WrestleMania proper, they were actually going to be bringing WrestleMania Fan Axxess on all of the cities that they were doing live events from the beginning of January until WrestleMania. So it was kind of their deal to kind of hopefully spark a road to WrestleMania and kind of drive up interest in all the events that were going around. So I will read this to you. They went on tour, and it was in partnership with the Fan Axxess THQ tour. And these are the different things that they had available for fans. You can do, fans get a chance to perform their own superstar entrance with Extreme Entrance. Presented by the CW Network, participants are introduced with their choice of superstar theme music and are filmed walking into the ring, and the entire experience is burned onto a DVD and as a WWE take-home.
There are so many words in there that are like foreign nowadays.
Completely. Like now you can do it, and I'm sure maybe you'll get. I don't even think you get anything. I think you just do it. Like I don't think you get a keepsake, and I think you have to pay to do it. So
I would say it is pretty cool that you get that keepsake, that you get that DVD. Nowadays, I'm sure it would be in the form of like a digital download or something.
Right.
You would at least hope. But also the fact I forgot that SmackDown was on CW for a little while there.
You're right. It must have been.
And that's why they were partnering with CW. And it's like, well, yeah, that's right. Because it was when back in the day it was on UPN.
You're right. Yeah.
And UPN didn't stop becoming a thing. And then I think that's when it was like UPN merged with the WB network to become CW.
And I'm really bad too. So for me, for years I didn't watch SmackDown because you'd get the spoilers. And if I knew spoilers were out there, I'd almost always read them. To this day, I struggle with that. Like if I'm watching a pay-per-view on a 3-hour delay, it kills me not to pull up and check out what the spoilers are because I know it's already happened. So the other part of this, How Raw Are You, presented by the USA Network, will pit fans against each other in a trivia contest to test our knowledge of the 15 years of Raw history. Superstar Inc. I don't recall that. I was at this and I don't remember this. Superstar Inc. allows fans to brand themselves with airbrushed versions of their favorite superstar logos. And then fans go head-to-head in a SmackDown versus Raw 2008 challenge presented by GameStop and THQ, playing one another in an immensely popular video game for a title for a chance to win a WWE Championship replica belt. There's also going to be Fan Nation Station, which will showcase WWE and partner products and services. And the biggest thing about this was that various superstars would be appearing at every one of these events. So when they came to New York, it was actually going, it was at the South Street Seaport, and they were here for 3 days. They were here on the Friday before the Rumble from 12 to 8, and the superstar appearance from 4 to 6 was Matt Striker. And it was a first-come, first-served basis, so limit of 200 people got to meet the superstar. So you have to get there like very early, and then you'd hope to get a wristband to meet the wrestler. The next day, it was to meet the Highlanders. And then on the day of the Royal Rumble, it was to meet, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. So I did not go to the first day because Matt and his wife, Romina, went down there. They had to get there very early, and I had to either work or go to school. I don't know what was wrong with me, because no way in my rest of life have I missed anything due to work or school. But
I mean, yeah.
Then in 2008, I guess I was responsible. And I did not go. And they had to get there like very early. And when you were able to go get your wristbands, they wouldn't give them an extra one for me. So there was no way for me to get there to meet Matt Striker. Also, we had just met Matt Striker at the SummerSlam thing a little while ago. And oh, by the way, he was indeed your teacher, or he was a teacher while you were in the school, right?
Yeah. It was one of my. I remember. I'm pretty sure he subbed a couple of times for a class that I was in. One of my biggest regrets to this day still is that I forgot to bring my yearbook with him in it for him to sign when we met him. That's one of my biggest regrets.
Because he couldn't even then turn around and be like, "No, that's not me." Like, because I think when we we talked with him about it, he was a little coy, like, yeah, oh, cool, was that true? Oh, nice. Like, I don't think he was like all about like, oh yeah, no, I love my time at Cardozo or anything like that. He was like,
yeah,
oh, no.
I could have been like, yeah, you yelled at me when I was sitting on a ledge to get off of a ledge once, and
what an honor that must have been.
Right? Yeah, I mean, who else can say that they got yelled at by a wrestler to get off the ledge? Come on.
That's pretty great, especially because we were seeing him wrestle like every week at the time.
Oh yeah, like, yeah, because well, that's why he wound up stop being our teacher, because he got fired for using 6 days when he ran out of personal days to go to like wrestling shows and stuff.
As a teacher, is that a big no-no?
So we don't distinguish it anymore, or at least in where I work as a teacher, we don't distinguish it anymore. If you call out, you call out. But I think that because he was teaching in New York City, I know they have a fairly like strict union and strict contract and stuff like that. So I think what it was probably one of those things where it's like because he ran out of personal days, so then he started using sick days, and they were like, we know what you're doing, stop doing that, and then he kept doing it, and then
because faculty would be at the shows, remember? You'd see like teachers a couple rows over from us at the independent shows.
Right, which is great. Now I'm on the other side of that, where I will go places and like see my students in the wild, like in real life. And it's always a weird interaction, because I am partially like, I don't want to have to interact with you, and they're also like very awkward of like, oh, that's a teacher. Like, what do we say to them?
Yeah, like, do not come over to. I remember we've been at restaurants where your former students were like at the restaurant as well, and it's a really awkward dynamic. I think for them, they're like, God, I can't screw up, and you're just like, please just don't talk to me.
Right, yeah, don't. Yeah. I see them all the time at the gym too. Like.
Yeah. Well, now you're with older kids too. So back then, it was like,
it is slightly less awkward now, because also like they know me more as a person now, so they know that I'm not like gonna get them in trouble, or I'm not gonna yell at them in public or something, like. You know, so but it is still a little awkward, where it's like, oh, hey, all right, well, let's keep going about our day now. Yeah,
now that is weird. So Matt and Romina met Matt Striker, and while they were there, they were doing a contest, not advertised here, but a wrestling impressions contest, where if you won this contest, you got 2 tickets to the Royal Rumble. And they were like, you've got to come tomorrow. You've got to do your Jim Ross. This is if I had done the Jim Ross now, post Bell's Palsy, I'd have won. But now, you know.
Oh, yeah, hands down now. It's like, wow, we can't, that's dedication.
Exactly. We actually went out and got Bell's Palsy. But this was like, all right, well, we've got to figure this out. And for me, I'm like, all right, this is going to be weird, but I'm going to try. So the next day we went down there, got our wristbands nice and early. Not pounding down the pavement of South Street Seaport was the line for the Highlanders, but we were there to go get them for Robbie and Rory, who were two of the nicest wrestlers I've ever met. To this day, I still say, like, if people are like, oh, who's the nicest wrestler you ever met? They're not going to be the first story I tell because no one really remembers the Highlanders.
Right.
But do you remember the Highlanders?
I do.
Yeah. We were so excited to meet. Like, let me tell you, meeting them the day before Ric Flair was much better meeting them than Ric Flair.
I can imagine, yeah. Although
Sweeter.
I will say that I at first thought because this is also like right before I had absolutely zero communication with the wrestling world and everything like that. But then once I started kind of like picking up on certain things, I first thought that when I first heard and saw Sheamus in the ring, that it was just like, oh, one of the Highlanders that went solo. And like just made it big. And because, that's a thing that's happened in the past. But I was like, oh, no, that's not, no. Okay.
You know what, though? It could totally have been one of them with like either grown out hair or slicked back hair or something. Why not?
Yeah, like, it's happened where all of a sudden tag team breaks up and one of them just happens to make it big and like, all that stuff. But
do you know the story of how they got terminated? They ended their run?
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
Robbie was at Universal Studios with his son. And his son wanted to go see an Impact taping. And he went to the taping and he like pleaded with them, like, please, I'm just here for my son. Please don't make it clear I'm here. And in the middle of the taping, they actually went ringside and got him on the camera and said, WWE superstar Highlander Rory. And he was canned. And for a while, maybe that's Robbie. And then Rory was still around by himself.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, he's just Rory the Highlander. It didn't work out. But a real shame because, I mean, that really sucks.
Yeah. But you have to know as a wrestler that that's going to happen. Like, I could never in my years see a WWE superstar going to an AEW taping and go, hey, let's keep this hush-hush because damn well that TK, the first thing that he's going to do is point the camera right at you and
probably
tweet about it.
Selfie.
Yeah.
Whole thing. Yeah, that would be, no. And so you feel for the guy, but they were so nice. I remember we were like, oh, we really want Wrestlemania. We really want Royal Rumble tickets. We're trying to win them later on in this contest. And like, don't give up, son. Even if you don't win these, you go down to the venue. You try your best to go get on that line. And so we were like, oh, do you think they're going to put tickets out? And they said, yeah, they always do. Always after they set up production, they'll always put them out. And so we were like, and I don't know why they're Indian, but
I was going to say, oh, so they were fake Scottish because they definitely didn't have those kinds of accents.
No, it's terrible. But yeah, so we went and so that kind of encouraged us. Now we're like, all right, so this doesn't work out because if it works out, we only got 2 tickets. We have 3 of us.
Right.
Not any of us. Like, I'm pretty sure their plan was like, we're going to have Tom win this contest. And they were going to take the 2 tickets and kick that son of a bitch right to the curb. He's going to get his own ticket somehow. But I don't think we had a plan, like, what was going to happen if I won. So I got up there, and it is nerve-wracking because you're up there. It's like you're standing in front of all these wrestling fans, and you're on the stage. And I went up there, and first couple people went awful. And I'm like, great. Fantastic. Like, everybody went, couldn't be worse. I'm like, I'm definitely going to beat them. Get up there, I do my best Jim Ross impression. Everyone's going nuts. People are high-fiving. They're going crazy. One guy left, and he gets up there, and he does the most incredible Joey Styles impression I've ever heard in my life. Because you had to not only choose the impression you were doing, but when the impression took place. So I did Jim Ross calling Jeff Hardy, trying to win the world title from The Undertaker.
That's a solid choice.
Grab the belt. You're going to do it. Like that whole deal. And at the end, I went from people going nuts for me to like when they went over for crowd applause, getting the polite applause. And I knew at that point that guy was going to win. And he did. And he deserved to win. But I did get a couple of DVDs for doing it. Like the brand new Austin DVD that came out and one of the other DVDs. And no one else who was in second place got that. So I took that as like, The hosts, who I think were like some random guy and Hillbilly Jim, were like hosts the weekend. Gave me that, and I thought that was really cool. And now we were like, all right, we're gonna come back and try again the next day. So next day we went out there, tried to meet Ric Flair. We were there crack of dawn to get on this line. Somehow got wristbands to meet him. Again, typical Ric Flair. Autographs like this. You don't even doesn't acknowledge. You met him twice. Never once acknowledged me. That day I was not chosen to participate because probably they were like, we saw you do it yesterday. And everyone in that contest that day was awful. Like I would have beaten. But that was the end. We had no tickets to get to Royal Rumble, and we were on our way to Madison Square Garden in hopes of getting them. Now, your story is a little different. You had gotten tickets pretty early, right?
Yeah, it was because, you know, usually when we got tickets, when we kind of made that decision to go, it was usually as soon as possible. We would get it at the first, you know, as soon as they went on sale. So I believe it's probably my cousin Eric that got the tickets. And we got also, usually we try not to get like the absolute craziest, most expensive seats, but still like pretty decent seats. And we did. I'm pretty sure our seats were like facing the entrance.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, obviously I went to the show. Everyone knows that. Yeah. Our seats ended up like, you guys were right here. Our seats were right here. We kept looking at each other and talking to each other about the show.
Yeah.
But what had occurred was, so you guys got the tickets early. Yeah, you guys had really, I thought we had great seats for the show, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, you know, that's one of the great things about Madison Square Garden also, where as long as you're not in the nosebleeds or like right where that kind of like that overhang is, like in the very, very back, you know, there's usually not a bad seat for a wrestling show at MSG.
Usually it is. It's one of the, and it is, I mean, I don't know, I won't speak for you, but I always feel like there's a bit of an aura when you go into Madison Square Garden as well.
There is, yeah, and you know, it's weird because it's not particularly big. But yeah, there's definitely it's, you know, it kind of has that kind of like hollowed ground feeling, you know, because so much stuff has gone on in that arena.
Especially because the way that it was set up back then was with the old school entrance, where you'd see the crowd and the entrance, rather than being like way in the back with the big long ramp, would just be like right in the middle of the crowd.
Yes. Yeah.
Rumble 2000, they had the taxi that was there.
Oh, yeah.
Mania 20, it's like they had a little stage area, but it was still like right there. You could literally, watching hard cam side, you see the entrance ramp right behind it, which is always fun. You see people walking back and forth. Like if people had to go get props and stuff like that, you'd always see them. And that was always something I loved about Madison Square Garden. And that's the case in this situation. That's when each wrestler comes out, you see them coming out right from that point.
Yeah.
So you guys had tickets for that. We did not. And now we're on our way to Madison Square Garden. We're on the line. And we don't have high hopes. Despite the Highlanders telling us that, yeah, they always put tickets on sale, we're like, this ain't looking good. There's hundreds and hundreds of people on the line. And to make matters worse, guess who we see while we're waiting on the line to get tickets? What was that?
Crime Time.
No, it's not Crime Time. It was you.
Oh.
And you walked by with your tickets. You already had tickets. And I think you said something like, well, I said, oh, are you guys going to the show? But it was probably like the worst interaction, right? Because here you guys come. Vince McMahon strutting along, having your tickets, having your,
as I always do,
and we don't have them. And we're standing on this line, and I remember we were like, "Oh, you're going to the show?" And you were like, "Yeah." And I said, "Who do you want to win the Rumble?" And you said the famous words of, "I don't really care who wins. I just know it's not going to be John Cena." And so thank God for that. And then you said, "Are you trying to get tickets?" And I said, "Yeah, hopefully we can get them." And I think you gave a very genuine, well, good luck. But I think the way Binder and Romina heard it, well, Matt and Romina heard it was, well, good luck, motherfuckers.
Right, yeah.
Run it off to your seats. Like, but I explained it. See, so I think they were like, well, why are we all not, how are we not all going together? Like, how does Steve have tickets and we don't, type thing. And I remember being like, well, Steve goes with his cousins. Like, they get their own thing. They do their own thing. They're not necessarily thinking about us. Like, kind of is what it is. and they were like, it is going to be so crushing if someone we know is at the show and we're not there. I was like, I get it. So we get up to the front, tickets go on sale. We're available to buy them, but because they're so like last minute seats, they were ridiculously expensive. I don't know if it was either out of my price range or I just didn't have the funds to pay for it at the time, but I had no way to pay for it. And Matt was not willing to help me out. I was like, sorry, man, nothing I can do. So I left Madison Square Garden, back toward Penn Station. I passed Mikey of the Spirit Squad, who was waiting for the subway, waiting for the double R as well. I don't know if he was like no longer a part of WWE and was just like there to see friends and maybe just waiting and going back home. And I remember I called my parents and they were like, all right, well, we'll order it here at home and we'll all come by to watch the Rumble and we'll see you soon. And I was literally on the LARR and Matt gave me a call and said, Romina covered my ticket. And so I ran back out, just the happiest I had been, ran back to the venue and got to go to the Royal Rumble. And I was very, very excited and never called my parents back and told them to cancel the Rumble. So Rumble started and I was like, oh, I'm here. We're ready to start the show.
Yeah.
And they were probably out $50-$60 and, but we were at the show.
Yeah. And that was also in a time where I would imagine that like cell service wasn't what it is today. And it's not like you could go on data or anything like that. So I think I also remember kind of about MSG where the cell service wasn't great in MSG. So even if you had, it might not have even gone through. Like,
I think you're right. And I think, so for me though, it was so exciting to be there. Now going into your day, anything you remember or that sticks out from your day going to the Rumble that day?
No. So I believe, I don't think this would have been the same day because I feel like since this was our last show, really, it was not when, at least, the infamous, or at least infamous within our circle with me, my cousins and my cousins' friends, the infamous chicken nugget incident happened at Roy Rogers. Where my cousin's friend had ordered some chicken nuggets, had kind of offered them to everybody, but then I either misinterpreted what he was asking or was being me and was just kind of like, oh, this is my chance, and just took the entire order of chicken nuggets that he had just gotten and
awesome.
And ate it as my own.
And is that the Roy Rogers in Penn Station, right?
Yeah, I think at this point now it's not there anymore, but it was probably the last remaining Roy Rogers for a while.
Yeah, it was, and it was always the place you went to if you were going to Penn Station beforehand. That's where everybody went before the shows, and where you'd want to go before you going to the wrestling show. Like that felt like the whole place was there. Whenever you were going to an event, that's where people went beforehand.
Yeah, well, and I think especially at least with like MSG, we've kind of sort of talked about this a little bit where there wasn't really like a whole lot of, if you're just looking for a quick kind of nice quick meal, like, you either go to a very fancy restaurant or you go to a fast food place. And, as, young adult males, we usually opted for the whatever is quick and easy and cheap.
Yeah. No, and I mean, for me, I know when I went with Ari, there was like this uppity steakhouse that she was like, oh, they have it right there. And I was like, I think we're all right. Let's go find something. Because I knew if we're going to the Madison Square Garden Steakhouse, it's got to be just like tons of money for whatever you're eating there.
Oh, yeah. Absurd, and even if it's good, it's going to be overpriced. Like,
yeah. So, but yeah, so we were settled in for the show now. Now, going into this show, anything you remember other than obviously the biggest news is that John Cena is out of the WWE title picture. Now, there is a generation, if you were to go back, I guess, growing up, who was the guy who you considered to have the best matches? Every time out, you could depend on this guy was going to be your guy to have great matches every time out.
So I think I would say one of two guys, and mostly I'm off the top of my head, I'm leaning towards either Edge or Triple H.
I think those are two very good ones. I think like Triple H is 2000. Every month he has a great match.
Yeah.
I think Kurt Angle too. I think is another guy.
That would be a good one. Yeah.
the generation below us, there is a generation below us who feels like the greatest year in for a WWE wrestler is John Cena's 2007. They just eat everything up that this guy does. He could do no wrong. And I know that's not how we feel, but I know that people were very much, he was the focal point of the show he was the guy in WWE for that entire year. Even longer. I mean, I think he had the belt since Mania 22.
Well, to be fair, when you only do 5 moves, it's really hard to mess them up.
That's very true. Yeah, the 5 moves of doom. So yeah, the idea that now he's out of WWE and is not going to be a part of WrestleMania, it kind of threw things into haywire because it was, this guy's been the guy for so long. What the heck are we going to do now? So was there anything else here that you remember going into this show that you were really excited about?
So as I was looking back, and kind of because to refresh my memory and everything like that, this is also one of the reasons why I believe when we had done our picks and everything like that, because we were still doing our pay-per-view picks and everything at the time, I had picked Triple H to win the Rumble, because there was this whole thing about how he had been kind of like, he had lost his opportunity to get into the Rumble.
Yes.
And then there was something that happened where he basically like lobbied and fought for a chance to get in. And then the second time around, he was able to get into the Rumble. And I was thinking, they're making such a big deal out of Triple H being the guy. And then it was also like Randy Orton was the champ at the time. So it could have been like, okay, we're going to see Randy Orton versus Triple H at Mania. Like, that sounds like a thing that should and could and would have happened.
Right. Especially because they had a few matches going in that were tough. And I do apologize for eating. I am battling quite the illness and icky, if you will. So I have a cough drop in my mouth. But 100%. I think Triple H was the odds-on favorite going into this. I think the other way you could have went with it was going into WrestleMania 24. It looked like maybe they'd go with somebody like The Undertaker, but they had kind of just done that. He won the Royal Rumble in 2007. He'd eventually go on to face Edge for the title, so I think they could have gone that way as well.
It was, again, like one of those things where you had, because they were so stacked for talent, because it really was like you look down this roster and go, really, a solid third of the entrants could have been the guy, could have been the one to win.
Yeah, it's a loaded field. Yeah. Well, and I think going into this too, other than that, the card is stacked. Other than the Royal Rumble, even though these matches don't typically live up to it, you have on this show Ric Flair versus MVP. They're doing the deal where if Ric Flair loses any match, he's going to retire.
Yeah.
You have Chris Jericho in one of his first matches back in WWE against John Bradshaw Layfield. He had one prior on pay-per-view, but this is kind of, he's settling into his role.
Yeah.
You have Edge against Rey Mysterio, where Edge has now solidified himself with Vicky Guerrero. And you have him going against Rey. And that, right there, you knew was at least at a minimum going to be a good match.
Yeah.
And then by far, I think the most excitement I know that I had going into the show was the idea that finally Jeff Hardy was going to be getting a one-on-one match for the title. And you knew at the Royal Rumble, sometimes they try something a little funky, right? Bob Holly got a world title match at the Royal Rumble once. They try some strange things. So maybe it was them throwing something at the wall to see what would happen. But maybe just the hype for this was so good. If you don't remember, they had the deal where Randy Orton kicked Matt Hardy where his appendix used to be, because Matt Hardy got taken out with the appendix, and then Randy Orton punted him. He was just starting the punting.
Yeah.
Then you had Jeff Hardy laying out Orton and hitting him off he did the big swanton on Raw leading up to it, off of like the awning of Raw, and hit him. And it was like, oh my God. And then, hate to give this band any sort of pub. I don't remember the name of the band. I think I put them out of my head at this point. But they had Rooftops. There's a song, I forget the name of the band. The band was very popular at the time. And the lead singer did something like absolutely heinous. And they used this song for Jeff Hardy. and it was just so well. It was so well done. The music video was incredible that it made you think. I'm trying to look and see here if I can pull it up real quick.
I remember that. I remember the video package.
Yeah, I was like standing on the rooftop.
Yeah.
I was like,
was it Lost Prophets? Yeah.
Yeah. And Lost Prophets were a band at the time I was a fan of. Again, I won't even. If no one knows the story, do not even Google it. But the lead singer has done some really terrible things.
I know what happened. Yeah,
And it's to the point where if you go on the WWE Network and watch this, because I watched a little of this stuff coming up, they actually show that music video, and it even says the song on there, Rooftops, Lost Prophets, but they changed the song. They should probably do that too, but they've changed the song for good reason. But it was such a well done package. Like at the end of it, you were like, oh my God, you were ready for Jeff Hardy to win the title. And I was like, they're going to pull the trigger on Jeff Hardy, and he's going to get the title here at the Royal Rumble. And so that was definitely going into it. My most excited. Looking back, I don't know that any of these matches live up to the hype that going into it, but going in, it was very exciting.
Yeah, and, I'm looking at it, and I know I still have kind of the same sort of like wrestling match mentality where what I kind of would gauge as a good wrestling match, I know is probably different from a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, I probably, not remembering a whole lot, but looking at it and trying to think, I probably wasn't excited for a match until it got to Edge Mysterio. Because
Orton and Jeff?
So from what I'm looking at, it was Edge and Mysterio, and then Orton and Hardy.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And then the Rumble. Because Ric Flair MVP never did anything for me. JBL definitely never really inspired any sort of I'm gonna see a good match when he's there. Jericho kind of, but I know this was 16 years ago. But feel like he was kind of on his way over the hill a little bit. I know he's had an amazing career since then, even still to now, but it kind of felt like he was starting to lose a step.
Well, I think what happened with Jericho was he was coming back with that great hype package where you had to figure out, crack the code.
Yeah.
And and we loved that. We were obsessed. We thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. We were always like putting codes on each other's MySpaces and all these things of like, what kind of play off that. So we were doing the BWF at the time, our basement wrestling league. We were using that as like our own codes, which we thought was just the coolest. And it was supposed to lead to Jericho coming back and saving the world from John Cena. And I think if that happened, it would have been awesome.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But it kind of nothing happened.
John Cena got hurt. So when he got hurt, they pivoted to him saving the world from Randy Orton. But at the time, we didn't really need to be saved from Randy Orton. He only had the belt a couple weeks. We were like, well, you know what? We'll hang with Randy Orton. We'll see what he can do. It's like, we didn't necessarily need you to be saved from him. We're thrilled it's no longer John Cena.
Yeah, and also Randy had an awesome theme music.
He did have an awesome theme music. So that I think is what happened with Jericho. And then they just like put him in this weird babyface vibe. And it takes him in this second run, it definitely takes him about a year to get going. He has the great feud with Michaels where he becomes like the really stoic Jericho, the heel Jericho who comes out in the suit and he uses really big vocabulary words. And I think, he punches Shawn Michaels' wife accidentally, but lands up clocking her for real and breaking her nose at SummerSlam 2008. And I think that really, their feud there brings him way back up. But yeah, when he comes back, it's like he's this huge return that we're waiting over 2 years for. And he comes back and within a month, he's completely stale. And I think it's just because the Save Us thing just didn't work out.
Yeah, but I know he is one of those wrestlers that has reinvented himself over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I just feel like, this one kind of was one of his lesser, even though it was a great hype to it, probably one of his lesser runs.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I echo your sentiment about the Ric Flair MVP thing. At this point, you knew there was no way Ric Flair was losing before WrestleMania. He certainly wasn't going to lose in the opening contest at the Royal Rumble to MVP. As much as I loved it. And I loved MVP. It was cool. Like, MVP came out and did the whole ballin'. Like, I thought that was awesome. Yeah. But it wasn't going to be beating Ric Flair here. And this was really just a showcase for Flair to come out and have, like, his going away tour. He came out. He said some words about Madison Square Garden. and he moves along here and goes from there. Now, before we even got there, you actually found a dark match that took place. I guess it was a dark match or a heat match or something beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, it's labeled as a dark match, but so it sounds about right. That was Jimmy Wang Yang and Shannon Moore defeating Deuce and Domino.
Wow, what an interesting team. I don't even recall Shannon Moore and Jamie Noble.
No, Jimmy Wang Yang.
Jamie Wang Yang. I don't recall them ever teaming up. That's crazy. I certainly don't recall that match.
It was probably one of those, like, we were sitting there and then going, you know what? Yeah, we still got time for a snack. Like, let's go and grab something before we settle in.
Yeah, no, exactly. Before we even get there, too, I think it's important we talk about the promotion for this, because I think it's one of the best promotions they've done, both on the poster as well as the video package in the beginning, where they did a deal where all the WWE superstars, I don't know how they did this. I don't know. This must have been like they created this in a studio somewhere. All the superstars invading the New York City subway system. And they had the deal where the subway doors open up, and once they close, there's Umaga sitting there and everybody battling with each other. And I thought it was such a great way to tie into New York City.
Yeah, and I feel like that's always, like, they always have pretty good promos when it comes to when they go to MSG or New York in general for any of these things, because there's so much that you can do with it. But yeah, I definitely liked the all of them fighting in the subway package.
And I watched it this morning before we started going, and I immediately, it was one of these things where I was like, oh my gosh, is that Batista throwing Chris Benoit out of the subway? And what I thought was, like, they would have had to film that in, like, June of 2007, knowing they were going to the Rumble in Madison Square Garden, totally pumped, and then, like, edited all of his clips out, but left that one in there. But I think you said it was it looked more like Orton, which I think
looked more like Orton. So the first thing is that Benoit never had just trunks; he always had long pant gear. And it, like, looking at it, because it's like black trunks with gold and stuff on it, and it kind of looks like the kind of stuff that Orton wore. So and I'm looking at the poster and going, okay, like, who else is in this poster that it could have been? And he's there kind of front and center. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's, I don't know who else in that poster, at least, that's there for it. It would have been.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that would have been but just a horrible snap. At the time, they're doing everything they could possible to just disassociate.
It would have been a very glaring omission.
Yeah. It's been like, how did we do that? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the real crazy pieces there. One of the things I love about kind of going into this piece as well is, or I guess one of the more interesting pieces, they have some backstage stuff that's all about the times. So one of the things they did a deal where Santino Marella comes to the ring. He's trying to stop Maria from posing for Playboy. And excuse me, Santino is a total heel at the time. So he comes out and he's rocking the New England Patriots jersey, because at the time we were getting ready for the Super Bowl, where it was going to be the New England Patriots, who were going for the undefeated season against the New York Football Giants. So this is the year where the New England Patriots are undefeated, going for the perfect season. All they have to do now is win the Super Bowl. They've pretty much been blowing everyone out, except for one really competitive game in Week 17 of that season, where the Giants decided they were just going to play balls to the wall. They had clinched the playoffs. They had nothing to play for. They decided not to bench their starters, though, and they gave them hell, and they almost won the game. So now you were setting up for kind of the rematch. Patriots against the Giants. You are a very big fan of the Washington Commanders, the Washington football team, the artist formerly known as the Washington Redskins. I am a big, gigantic fan of the rather pathetic New York Football Jets. Neither of us a Giants fan. Going into this Super Bowl, what were you feeling?
This is like the series, all, this one and the other ones were all very torn, because it was also, it's always like, I never root for a front runner. Like the Patriots were like one of the most feared and like hated football teams if you were outside of the New England Patriots bubble. So I could not find myself to root for them. I also found it hard to root for the Giants as a Commanders, then Redskins fan. But the Giants were always the kind of like least disliked of all of those teams. Cowboys are almost always number one. Eagles almost always number two. They kind of flip back and forth sometimes. But Giants always kind of was just like, I only really dislike them because they're in the same division. Like, you kind of have to. So it was kind of like all right, the lesser of two evils is the New York Giants here. And if I can do anything to spoil Bill Belichick and Tom Brady's season, I'm going to root for that, whatever it is. So I was rooting for the Giants.
It is interesting that they put this on the show because it's so local, right? Like, I don't think anyone else cares that much, but it got a ton of. The second he comes out wearing the Patriots stuff, the crowd is "Let's go Giants!" Like, people are so into, because typically too in New York, you've got Knicks, Rangers, Yankees, Giants. That's typically your big four. And if you're a fan of the Mets, you're typically also a fan of the Jets.
Yeah.
Maybe the other, you probably, it's not as much with hockey and basketball. But I thought it was just so interesting to see. And I was with you 100%. I was not a huge fan of the Giants, but it was one of these things where it was almost like they were harmless. They were the more successful of this franchises in New York, but I had no problem, and I surely did not want the Patriots to go undefeated. I had more than enough, and I was really, and then that Super Bowl I think is one of the best Super Bowls of all time, honestly.
I could say that. I could see that
with the Giants winning. Now I will say the second time around, when the Giants were there against the Patriots, Brady throws up a Hail Mary, and I did jump off my couch and pray that Gronkowski pulled that son of a gun in. I had enough, and I was way past the Giants at that stage. But as far as the first one goes, I thought it was pretty good.
Well, also because again, you had your own personal reasons to be rooting against the Giants at the time, so that was a little bit more of a thing. Yeah, and so definitely I could see that, and I think that was kind of one of those, like, by extension, I also was trying to root against the Giants for you.
What a good friend, what a good brother.
But also, like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm still looking for the Patriots to lose. Like,
right, it still is the Patriots.
Yeah, at the end of the day. But and even now though, like, especially now that Belichick isn't there anymore and Brady isn't there anymore, they've kind of lost their teeth.
Yeah,
it feels kind of like you don't need to be rooting against the Patriots anymore. They do that enough by themselves.
Well, we're depending on the Washington Commanders to get it right in the next draft, to make sure they get the right QB so that the other QB doesn't go to the Patriots and become the next Tom Brady.
That's true. That's fair.
You guys got to do good with that. So, but yeah, no, it was
your best.
Hopefully. But yeah, it was a really fun kind of sign of the times there. And this leads to, I'd say match of the night. I thought in terms of in-ring action, Rey Mysterio and Edge. One of the things I really enjoyed about this particular match was how torn Rey was here, because obviously he still has a lot of love for Vicky. It's Eddie's widow. But Vicky Guerrero has now become a major heel and has aligned herself with Edge. What were your thoughts on Vicky Guerrero's heel turn?
I always disliked her characters wherever it was. I also, like, from an outside perspective, it was always kind of just like, it felt weird because the only reason why she was there or around in the first place because it felt like WWE kind of like felt bad for her.
Right.
And so that was like, oh yeah, let's give Vicky something to do, like, because we kind of feel bad that it was probably us that led to everything happening. So it was like, not a great actress, like, not a lot going on there personally, and it was always kind of, but then on the flip side, it's like those are the kind of also things that would probably make her a good heel, because like it's easy to hate her.
Right. Yeah. No, and I will say, I mean, when she first came, I thought she was very much monotone, maybe almost robotic.
Yeah.
Weird. But she got into the role really well and did a great job becoming the most hated heel. You think about how hard it must be for the widow of Eddie Guerrero to become such a maniacal, hated heel, to the second you hear her voice and the second you hear that, excuse me, everybody booing her out of the building, and her having like a 10-year run. Pretty incredible.
Well, it runs in the family, I guess. I guess now we know where Dom gets it.
That's true. That's right, from his daddy, from Eddie Guerrero. So yeah, great match here. One of the best spots of the match here is definitely Edge catches Rey with a mid-air spear, does whatever it takes to keep on what he's doing, and continues on as the world champion. Did you like Edge as the world champion here, flanked by Hawkins and Ryder and the family, Chavo, and everyone?
I've always liked Edge.
Yeah.
So, even as a heel, even when he was the Rated R Superstar and it was on hold, the only thing that there was the one awkward thing where it was the live sex celebration with him and Lita.
Yeah.
That was on Raw or whatever. That was probably the one thing where I'm like, no, that did not need to happen.
No, I'll never forget it. I was sitting on the couch that day watching the show with my sister and my dad. And it's one of these things where they're watching it because you're a fan, and that's going on. And you're like, man,
this is the cringiest. Like, this is the hardest thing to watch.
Yeah.
Like, who is that? Was that that feels like an Eric Bischoff decision?
I don't know. I just know it was way too much. I will say ratings were sky high for that segment though, like the highest they'd been in years.
Yeah.
Because I think once Edge said he was having that live sex celebration, people were like, damn. We're going to tune in for that.
Yeah. Want to see Lita.
What's that?
Want to see Lita.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to, too. That was the best part, was they thought they wouldn't have been able to come across as believable unless she was actually naked. So while they're getting on the bed, you see her popping out all over the place, and it was ridiculous. But yes. So next up, you did have Randy Orton against Jeff Hardy. Before that, they introduced the newest member of the announced team. Do you remember who that was?
Was it the Dapper Yapper, Justin Roberts?
No.
He was already there.
Mike Adamle, who was the American Gladiators, former football player.
Oh, okay.
Formerly, unfortunately now, has come out that he's had some issues with CTE and is suffering through dementia. So we didn't know this at the time, but a famous moment of this show is when he introduced, and it's actually edited off the network. So if you go back, you won't see this. But he goes and says, we're getting ready for this next title match where Randy Orton will be defending his title against Jeff Hardy. And it was like known as one of those infamous moments ever because he flubbed Jeff Hardy's name. But once you find on that he's had all these issues, it really isn't that funny.
No, but also, like, I don't know. You would feel like that those are the kinds of things that you could just record, and nowadays would probably be recorded in advance so you could get it right.
Right, they had him out in the crowd. I don't know why. They've never done this, and instead they had him throw to a video package from the crowd. He'd go on to be the ECW announcer, famous for when Kofi Kingston debuted. He'd every time Kofi would hit his finisher, he'd say, "You're making me crazy, Kofi," and would eventually go on to be the Raw general manager until they realized it just wasn't working out. But he was there for a little while, and it was definitely an interesting fit. But moving right along, the big match, the Royal Rumble, I'd say that one of the things that immediately springs to mind is the first and only Royal Rumble, to my knowledge, that does have Michael Buffer. The announcer who does Let's Get Ready to Rumble, the famous guy. I think if anyone says Let's Get Ready to Rumble, they've got to pay him a huge royalty for it. He has it he has it locked down. He comes out, and it makes so much sense. It was amazing to me that this is the first time this ever happened.
Well, I think for a long time he was contracted with WCW. I think that was one of the major reasons.
Yeah. I forgot about that. He used to do all the matches, right?
Yeah, or at least like the big ones, or at least like the big pay-per-views and stuff.
That's crazy. I know. For me, one of the things that jumps out at me here is he comes out, he does the entrance for The Undertaker, and he only does the first two announcers because that's all he needs to do, right? He's the announcer 1 and 2. So he does Undertaker, this is great because Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, they're building to eventually having this epic match, right? Everybody knows these guys haven't had a match since 1997, and everyone's like, wow, they're both at their peaks right now. Undertaker's starting to have great matches at every WrestleMania with Orton, with Edge, with Batista. Shawn Michaels he's amazing. He's having great matches all over the place. And it starts to become pretty apparent that, like, hey, Shawn and Taker have not really had a match since Shawn's returned. We got to have that match. And so WWE does a great job of really teasing this over a 3-year span where they're the final two of the 2007 Royal Rumble, and then the two of them start things off at the 2008 Rumble. And immediately it goes from like, hey, we're starting the Rumble, and here we go. 60 miles an hour, let's go. And I thought that was just such a great start to the match.
Yeah, and it definitely foreshadows the kinds of matches that they're going to wind up happening a couple of years later.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Michael Buffer introduces Shawn Michaels as the Heartbreak Kid. He never says Shawn Michaels. He just says the Heartbreak Kid. But I mean, I guess that's his nickname. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Was it something that he had to have on a card, or was it just like, hey, go out and introduce these guys?
Well, it's interesting. He's come out as actually being a huge wrestling fan. I never thought he was. I always thought it was like, hey, he just was paid to do this. He was, I know he's a big boxing guy. And, but no, if you follow him on Twitter, he's tweeting about wrestling all the time. And yeah, that could have been it. Maybe he just got caught up in the moment and was just like the Heartbreak Kid and forgot the Shawn Michaels part.
That's probably what it was.
Yeah. So, but that was a great way to start this off. Another great moment for me on this particular, and it's odd, right? Like, so we have to talk about this from the perspective of looking back at where we were in 2008, is the moment where Roddy Piper comes out, surprise entrant. Actually, I don't know if Superfly Jimmy Snuka might be before Piper.
Snuka was before Piper.
Right, so Snuka comes out. Obviously, Snuka, crappy guy. We all know. Later on, we found out some horrible things about him. At the time, didn't know this. Or maybe we did, and we just, it was like not really known.
I feel like this was right before anything that was ever brought out. And I think that it was also because if you ever heard something, you didn't necessarily, it's not that you didn't care, but not as much weight was put on it.
100%. That's a great way to say it. Yeah, for some reason there wasn't much. And later in life, definitely was. But this moment, you consider their history, you consider everything in Madison Square Garden. They come out, Snuka comes out, Piper comes out behind him. And when he does, great moment where everyone in the ring, all the wrestlers stop fighting and just watch in awe of the two of them. And I think that's just so cool and well done.
Yeah. But I'm also looking at it going, I'm surprised that those are the only two Hall of Famers. Like, those are the only two, like, legends that came out in this one.
Well, and Mick Foley.
But I think, so if I'm looking at like the rundown and everything and who they say who belongs to who, Foley is credited as being on the Raw brand.
Makes sense. When he comes out, he doesn't get like a huge, oh my God, it's Mick Foley pop. He gets like, oh, cool, it's Mick. Like,
yeah, because I think he was on enough where even though he wasn't like super wrestling a lot, he was still there a lot.
True.
And I think maybe that's why.
The show in 2007 where the whole Benoit thing happens, he main events that show. He's in that 5-pack challenge for the title. So yeah, he must be like a part of it. That makes a lot of sense because I was wondering why when Mick comes out, there's not like this huge pop. And I think a part of it is also they knew what was coming at number 30. And so I think they thought
everybody else did.
Right. Yeah. I had no, you see, I'll, and I guess we could get to number 30 here and the big. So who did you think? Because it became pretty clear. I don't know if you're like me, but me, I'm like I spend most of the Rumble going through everyone who's announced. So as each guy comes out, I go, all right, we still have Batista, we still have Triple H, we still have Elijah Burke, we still have, whoever else. And once it came down to like the final three, it became clear to me that like, oh shit, we don't know who one of these people is. Did you have any idea it was going to be John Cena?
No. And I think it was one of those in the back of my head. I was expecting Triple H to be in at 30. And then when he came out in 29, I think that was kind of one of the first about like, it wasn't like oh gosh, I wonder who's going to be at 30 now. I think it was oh no. No, no, don't let it happen. Like, no, 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 no. Like, let it be some random person. But then again, like, there wasn't anybody else that it could have been
Yeah.
at the time. Like, that was going to be coming out. Like,
Well, so the thing was, right before this show, it had leaked that the Big Show had resigned with WWE. So I remember the three of us, 1,000%, not only convinced, but for whatever reason, ridiculously stoked. Oh my God, we're going to be here for the big return of the Big Show.
yeah.
And so as this is coming, 10, 9, 8, the countdown starts rolling. We are in position with the hand. And it went, whoa! Like, I don't know why we were so, but I remember being like, it's got to be Big Show. He's going to show up and he's going to win the Royal Rumble. Like, this is it. We hadn't seen him in years. This is Big Show's back. We heard he lost a ton of weight. He looks great. And so that's what we thought it was. And instead, number 30, and the way they do it is great because they do the 10, 9, 8 countdown. It gets to 0, you're, and then nothing for like a second or two, just to let it breathe before the rattling of the chains starts, and then Cena's music hits. And at this moment, now, you certainly were not happy. Matt and Romina certainly were not happy. I completely lost control of every part of myself, and I like left my body and forgot that I didn't like John Cena and marked out so more than I think I ever have in my life. Like, it was insane.
I can tell you that it was the like most deflating moment in our row, because it was I think the two most deflating moments I'd ever been up to that point as a wrestling fan were this moment and when Kane got unmasked, when he lost the championship shot to Triple H.
Well, you were at a lot of these shows back in the day. You were at a lot of really big things.
Yeah, which is interesting, and also that Triple H was both a large part in both of those moments.
Yeah.
On opposite sides of it, but yeah, like I think we were more deflated at the Kane thing because it was both wanting really, like, Kane was one of our collectively, like, in our top 5 favorite wrestlers, all of us collectively. And to like watch that just kind of deflate, not only that, but also where it went and how it was handled and everything was so ridiculous. But it was just kind of that moment of the second that his music went off, you knew that he was going to win. Like, the second he comes out, you know he's going to win. There wasn't any ever, oh, he came back, but maybe he's not going to win. And it was like, if you were betting, you ripped up your ticket. Like, it was a whole, like,
you had your picks. You're like, screw it.
Yeah.
Done. Let's go home. Let's catch the LARR. And I'll never forget, because I knew you were not a Cena guy. And I'm at this stage, I'm throwing him up. I am like the happiest I'd ever. I'm like, this is an amazing moment. And I looked back at you, and you were so upset that this had occurred. And I look over at Matt and Romina, and I think they were like not happy he returned, but I think they were so surprised at how excited I was that they were like, "Oh, I mean, okay." Like, I thought we hated this guy. We do, but it was, you got wrapped up in it, because also the Garden did too. The Garden hated John Cena, but for some reason when he came out, it was like the place just it was the biggest ovation I've ever heard, and I don't think anything's ever topped it. I mean, live at least. I wasn't there for Punk's return or AJ Styles' debut, but I think that this really was so out of left field. And for me, I think it's almost in a way ruined the Rumble, because the whole thing was John Cena is going to be out for a year, right? And this is like October of 2007.
Yeah.
So there ain't a chance this guy's coming anywhere close to the Rumble. Like, if he shows up at SummerSlam, it would have been weird.
Yeah.
So when he shows up, and he even does it, when I went back and watched it, he even does it perfectly, because he comes out, he puts his head down, and then he pops his head up, and it's just like this moment. And Triple H is great, because he's like, no, like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then he does the very cool, like, takes his shirt off with the one hand. That I'll always remember, for whatever reason, that I at the beach after that forever, I'd always try to take my shirt off with one hand. But it was crazy. Nobody expected it. But I think now you watch the Rumble, and every entrant is like, oh shit, I wonder who it's going to be. Is it going to be MJF showing up at the Royal Rumble? Is it going to be somebody completely ridiculous that makes no sense. But because of that start of it right here, 2008, I think it's going to be what people wait for no matter what at every Rumble.
Yeah, and I think that knowing now that CM Punk is a part of WWE again, had they not had the opportunity to have his comeback be in Chicago, I'm thinking how absurd it would be for him to be number 30 this year. Like, how absurd would it have been for all of a sudden? Because, again, similar thing where you're going on the list going, wait, all of the big guys have come out already. Like, who is this going to be?
Yeah.
I do think it would be cool if I'm sure MJF is already secured and locked into AEW, but there's that part of me that wants to believe that, but on a similar thing, if the Rumble was anywhere, if it was at Nassau Coliseum or if it was at MSG or something like that, I could see it more likely being, maybe they're going to find a way to get MJF on the Rumble just for the one match even. But I don't think it makes any sense.
No.
It'd be awesome, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I think it's two. I think one is that, and then I think two is the idea that they had AJ Styles show up in Orlando in 2016 as a surprise entrant. Number 3, a one-on-one with Roman Reigns. It's like, that is the reason why every single year people go, it's going to be Kenny Omega. That's going to be Kenny Omega. And for years, it's going to be Kenny Omega. And I think it's like the John Cena return and that return are what makes the Rumble so special and so exciting, but also can be a little bit tough sometimes because like last year, Cody Rhodes is number 30. Everyone knows he's got to be number 30, but almost it's like, maybe it's Cody or maybe he gets attacked backstage and it's, somebody coming back. It's like that type of stuff can sometimes, I think, be a detriment to the Rumble.
Yeah. Do you see that happening this year? Do you see any of that kind of, any big returns or any surprises or anything like that this year at the Rumble?
On the men's side, no. I think the men's side is so loaded where you do have a couple of different possibilities there. I think certainly you can have it be Punk winning. I think you can certainly buy into Cody winning. I think you could probably buy in if you wanted to maybe a Gunther winning and taking that next step over to that next level. The only surprise really could be that The Rock shows up at number 30 and wins the Rumble himself and goes on and tosses Cody Rhodes' monkey ass over the top rope and goes on to challenge Roman at WrestleMania. So that could be. I do think the woman you can have a lot of fun with. I think, AJ Lee, certainly being CM Punk's wife, that could lead open to that. Jade Cargill's been signed for a little bit. She hasn't been seen anywhere.
I feel like they've been waiting for the Rumble for her to debut. I feel like it feels right for that. It
does. I do, and I think also it's good because Tampa's sort of close to Jacksonville where AEW. Yeah. I think it won't be like a set. I don't think she's going to come out and get this roarious pop, but I think she'll get at least a good acknowledgement if she shows up.
Yeah, I wonder if she uses the same music in AEW. I wonder if that was like I don't remember her music enough for it to be if it was like an actual song or if it was an AEW original or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. Me neither. The only other one that and then you could have some of the fun ones. I'm still waiting on Mr. Kennedy. Once it hits, at some point it's got to hit, and I'll just be the happiest. I don't know if they'll ever bring him back, but for a one-night pop with the Kennedy entrance, I think I've been waiting for it, and I think it would be great to. Now they're starting to trickling some of these guys back, where you did it with MVP, you did it with Carlito. Hopefully that era. I think Kennedy's the next one that hopefully can come back.
Yeah, there are a few here. It's so weird looking at this though. Like looking at the list from 2008, as far as the guys that have unfortunately passed on. Where there's a few that are in AEW. There's a couple that are in AEW, and then the rest are like, either retired or still wrestling. Like, you got obviously you got Punk and Rhodes that came in back to back.
Yeah.
You got the Miz in there. You got Shelton Benjamin, who until very recently was a part of WWE. Obviously, you got Trips and Cena at the end. Carlito's in there, so
he's still there. Yeah, wow.
There's the amount of guys that are still around.
And we're talking 16 years ago at this stage.
Yeah.
I always remember one of the final people being Elijah Burke, and I was such a big fan of Elijah Burke with the 4-up. I don't know why he was doing that. He was giving with the 4-up, and he was the guy on the ECW brand that Vince McMahon came out and during 1 week came out and said, these are going to be my future guys. Did it on SmackDown with Drew McIntyre. Did it on ECW with Elijah Burke. And I thought, like, they both can't miss. I still don't understand why it didn't work out with Elijah Burke. I thought he was great. After the show, because Matt and Romina were like a little insane with the stuff back in the day. We used to do and even if like because if you missed the LARR coming back from Penn Station to Bayside or something, you normally would have to wait sometimes an hour for the next train.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we'd still do the stand outside, watch all the wrestlers leave, try to get a glimpse of them as they were leaving. And I'll never forget a couple of different ones. Pete Gass from the Mean Street Posse was outside, and he couldn't have been nicer to fans. So sweet. You also had Darryl Strawberry, former baseball player, was also walking around now. Randy Orton looked like he was totally goofing off with his best buddy, Santino Marella. And they were walking around, and Santino, you could tell his star was on the rise. Even though he was a heel, he was coming out, and he was out with Orton. And people were much more into Santino than they were Orton. And the famous one, Ric Flair comes out, runs under the barricade to come get to Ric Flair. Kid is no older than 5 years old. And Ric Flair stops the kid, and he yells at the parent and says, have some control over your kid. And refuses to, like, sign for the kid, take a picture with the kid, anything. Like, everyone starts booing him, and then he lets out a big woo, and everyone goes, yeah. I'm like, you sheep. What is wrong
You're
with
so fickle.
Yeah, you fickle fans, exactly. Like, put the gif of Daniel Bryan calling everyone fickle. But yeah, it was a very, very cool time. And for those who don't know, John Cena would go on to challenge for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 24. And that match was initially going to be the main event of the show, Randy Orton versus John Cena versus Triple H. I even got the program, which I showed you guys when I first got it, that actually has it listed as the main event. But at the show itself, that was not the match that went on last. A decision was made to change that to The Undertaker versus Edge, which I think at the end of the day was the right call.
Yeah, I would agree.
Especially both those guys were undefeated going into that Mania. Yeah. I think that was the right way to go. Had a great main event too. So, but yeah, so this was a lot of fun. A great look back at this. Any closing thoughts you have on any of the Royal Rumble 2008?
I'm glad that I am back in the wrestling scene. And I would say that my attitude towards John Cena has softened ever so slightly.
I think we were both able to look at him this last time around and go, he's really a pretty corny guy. Some of the stuff he does. But at the same time, I think we also saw some value in him being back, and he wasn't having he wasn't having matches even. But I think that some of the stuff he was doing definitely added to the program, especially during that lull of the year where Roman wasn't going to be around. I think he kind of bridged the gap there for a good portion of it.
Yeah, and I think he is, if he fits into that kind of like, going and doing the high-profile promo or the high-profile feud that doesn't need to have the title in the picture in order to be compelling, it's great. I think that if the title is in the picture, it definitely it loses something, because it's either like you either have there's no way in hell that he's going to win the title, or there's okay, so he wins the title, where do you go from there? Like, is it going to actually be back? Is it going to be another part-timer? Like,
right.
So I would enjoy seeing him return to, however, what kind of capacity, as long as it's that kind of like, he does the high profile feud thing. He kind of puts the new guys over kind of thing, elevating that, where if it's anything more than that, it's going to start diminishing returns.
And I will say, I think I could kind of at least look back at this era of John Cena, 2006 to 2008, and understand the appeal. Somewhere along the way, he becomes like this guy who comes out in 2007, 2008, and he's super serious. And he comes up with the little salute, and he's super intense. Boom, hits the salute, runs down in the ring. Somehow, from like 2008, 2009, 2010, he transforms to, hey there, Stu, what's going on? We got people in the rafters. Let's go to work. And gets into this like way cartoony type of guy where he's almost making fun of the fact of what he's doing. It's weird. I don't know where he kind of became that top act. That just didn't work, I didn't think.
I feel like it was right around the time where he started becoming more popular with like the younger kids.
Yeah.
And that's why like his t-shirts and all that stuff started to be very more cartoony, like the, like animated t-shirt and that kind of thing. And I think that may have also been one of the reasons why I started to very much strongly dislike him, is because he was like the Disney Channel or like the Nickelodeon of wrestling at the time. Like it's, as a 20-something-year-old, it was kind of like,
right. Every
it was so corny.
Month he'd have a brand new bright color shirt. Like it'd be like, we get it. We don't need a brand new wardrobe every time. And I think that really, and that probably drove off a lot of people, in terms of him doing that whole deal and not being more of a serious type character in that main event slot. I think that definitely made things a little tougher for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, like I said, I'm glad to be back in the scene now.
Absolutely. No, it's good to have you back in it as well. And, always happy to have you here. Hopefully we'll be able to connect sometime in the next week or two to do our official Royal Rumble predictions for the year and get started on that, be able to kind of keep track on, have a good time with our official picks. But in the meantime, let us know what some of your favorite memories of this Royal Rumble 2008 were. Let us know in the comment section, and we will be sure to check those out and give you some feedback from us here to the best that we can. Steve, anything that you wanted to say before we get on out of here?
No, just wish you all the best. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
All right, everybody, take care. What do you have?
The 14.
Oh, yours is much better than mine. That's probably why you look so clear. I have a 12 because I wouldn't do the 13 when we got the phones, because I'm superstitious like that. I can't be. I hate that we're doing this today on the 13th. But,
I actually skipped from 12 to 14. We waited long enough where we were waiting around for the 14 to come out, and then I got the 14 fairly soon after the 14 came out.
You'd have nothing but horrible luck for the entire time of having the phone. I don't blame you for doing that.
I mean, it's going to be great when eventually in maybe another couple of years they get around to the 18. You're going to have to keep that one around.
Oh, that's a for sure purchase. For sure purchase. All right. Are we all set?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to try to swipe off and come back, or do you don't want to try it again?
I just did. I don't think it worked.
That's right. You're going to see me. You see me at least, right?
I do not.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So maybe hold on. I'll swipe out and come back.
All right. Let's see if that works.
Did that work for you?
That works for me. I can see you. Can you see me?
Nope.
You can't.
What are you on?
What am I on?
Are you using your phone?
Yeah, my phone.
So what if you swipe out and then try and go back into it?
You're asking what I was on. I was going to say Tylenol, Dayquil. Let's see. Okay, let's see if that works. All right, can you see me now?
Yeah, actually, yeah. There you go. That we figured out the trick.
I think we should keep all of this, and this is such great, such great stuff.
Deleted scenes.
There you go.